Hello, Pong Stars, and welcome to the Rathole. This is your host, Commissioner Zack Eichten. Just excited to be here. We're here with my co-host for this week, team owner of the Rock Flopstas currently, John Stevens.
Yes, 1 week closer to NFL football. Only 1 week away from the keepers being set. So expect to see a bit of activity in the chat and amongst team owners this week that are trying to maybe make some last second moves to solidify their keepers. So it should be a fun week.
So John, just before we get started here, as we're recording, we're approximately 1 hour and 47 minutes away from the start of Bachelor in Paradise. Any predictions for this upcoming season?
I am going to make a very bold prediction that somebody falls in love with Queen Victoria from Matt James's season of The Bachelor. Even though she seems like the most psycho B word of all time.
She's legit crazy.
Yeah, I think somebody's going to fall for her, and I think she's going to have a beautiful arc to love.
I could see the box guy. I could see box guy falling for Queen Victoria. That seems like.
I think Carl maybe. My main man Carl from the last season of The Bachelorette.
Carl definitely has the vibes that he could jive with.
That'd be Queen fire Victoria. And fire. It could be great, but it could also just end horribly.
Yeah. Maybe Thomas. He didn't seem crazy though, so I don't know if that's the right vibe.
Yeah, I don't like Thomas, so that'd be fine with me.
Yeah.
All the people I don't like, they can be with Victoria and then live happily ever after in their psycho world.
All right, hot takes here, of course, with John Stevens. We'll keep you updated as the season progresses on Queen Victoria in her Bachelor in Paradise
of course.
Journey here. But
we'll have to include a Bachelor in Paradise segment going forward.
I think
might have to bring on Jamie to discuss.
Jamie would be great at discussing. Of course, the first lady of the Pong Stars Fantasy Football League would be a great addition to this.
Important to remember, though, this is not a Bachelor podcast, but we may talk about The Bachelor from time to time. Don't get mad.
Don't get mad. It'll only be most weeks.
Yeah,
moving forward. But it's
only the best drama on TV. So. You're missing out.
Just enjoy it.
Yeah.
Come along for the ride. Who cares about Monday Night Football when we have Bachelor in Paradise this upcoming season?
I do hate that.
But let's get over to some NFL news.
Da-na-na-na, da-na-na-na-na.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Glad that John was here to deliver that rendition of the NFL news segment here. First up, Dak Prescott, injured ? Or is there nothing to be concerned about?
Yeah, the first episode of Hard Knocks aired last week, and there was a lot of talk about this weird strain going on with Dak Prescott's arm, and they were very cautious. They kept him out of all throwing drills for the whole week. They did multiple MRIs, but the whole time they're like, it's not a big deal. But it seems like it's at least a deal. I don't know if it's a big deal, but it definitely is causing some concern for the Cowboys, and I think should definitely be causing concern for fantasy owners. Looking specifically at Brennan, who traded his first-round pick this year for Dak Prescott when he already had Aaron Rodgers. So, I think Brennan's probably feeling the hot seat pretty good right now, and might be time to hit that panic button. He might have to just keep neither of his quarterbacks and just completely lose out on his first round pick that he gave up. But I don't know. I really believe when it comes down to it, Dak Prescott will probably start the beginning of the season and be fine. But it's definitely not the news you want to hear going into a season where he's coming off of a season-ending injury. Although it's not related at all, you just were kind of hoping for him that he wouldn't have any setbacks, and now it's already starting. So, best of luck to Dak and the Cowboys, but I guess we'll wait and see.
I think what was most concerning that was the tweet of there's nothing to be alarmed. And it's like,
yes,
I definitely am much more alarmed now that you said there's nothing to be alarmed about.
Yeah, might be one of I don't know who the social media guy is for the Dallas Cowboys, but I can guarantee they would be much better with Drew Mahol running their social media, because that was just a I don't even know.
Poorly executed tweet.
I don't really know what their objective was, but yeah, I totally agree. When you say there's nothing to be alarmed about, that just raises all the red flags for me. And I'm like, yes, there is a lot to be alarmed about.
It's like I was playing with my friend when I was a youth.
Mm-hmm.
We were playing Beanie Baby dodgeball in the house, and a Beanie Baby, one of those bears. There's so many bears. One of those bears got whipped really hard, hit the massive picture frame above the fireplace, got knocked off the hook, fell down, cracked, glass shatter everywhere. So the first thing, nobody got hurt. But the first thing I did was call my mom and was like, well, there's nothing to be alarmed about.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, well, this is very obviously still not great. Something is up. There is something to be noted here. Otherwise, you wouldn't say anything.
It's like the classic, don't worry, but
it's like
but say something that's going to make you very worried. So yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I think it'll be fine, but that is pretty hysterical.
Yeah.
It definitely made for some good Twitter content.
Absolutely. I do have some good news though coming from the NFL, and it is that the Falcons actually, surprisingly to me, are the first team to have every single one of their NFL players vaccinated against the coronavirus.
Mm-hmm. Looking at you, Vikings.
Yeah, looking at you, Vikings. It is
Vikings might be at 50%.
Vikings went down after cuts. Like it's not great for the Vikes. But on this program during the first episode of this season, there was a very hot take that the Falcons were basically Super Bowl locks. At this point, I think that take has aged well.
Absolutely.
It hasn't gotten worse. Let's just say that.
I'm not saying this is correlation or causation, but I would say that higher number of vaccinated players leads to, in some amount, better chance of making the playoffs and therefore winning the Super Bowl. So I think we were spot on. Matt Ryan, also MVP case rising even more because he's vaccinated.
Absolutely.
Which I didn't know before, but now we know. So yeah, I mean, Matt Ryan, MVP, Falcons Super Bowl champs, I would say lock it. They got rid of Julio, who was clearly the problem.
He was the one holding them back.
Yeah, exactly.
Old man Jones. They needed some younger blood in there. But mark it down. We're going to double down on our Super Bowl pick with the Atlanta Falcons.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, it will be interesting, though, to see with that news coming out, or as more teams maybe move more towards requiring players to get vaccinated. Like, I feel like once one team, I think the Saints have already done it, but as soon as a few teams do it, the dominoes might really start to fall, and all the teams might just start requiring it because the precedent's been set by another team in the league. But it'll obviously be a big story going into this season that we'll have to monitor closely. So,
all right. Well, and with that note, let's head on over to our league news.
Da-na-na-na, da-na-na-na-na.
All right. So not much additional league news this week. We have obviously our keeper deadline is upcoming next week, August 24th. All of the transactions will be locked at that point until teams have dropped all of their players. And then obviously there will still be trading and pick trading that's allowed to happen within that keeper pool prior to the start of the season. Those rules were decided last year after KeeperGate, that only marked keeper players would be eligible for trading during that 2-week period. And of course, that 2-week period leads up to September 7th, our draft date, which we're obviously all extremely excited about. I know I've been looking at the draft board frequently, watching for those subtle changes on the draft board. I noticed that Antonio Gibson, aka Giblet, is now no longer available on the draft board after somebody updated their keepers after last week's episode.
Yep. I mean, still available for trades. So he's like I've always said, for my team personally, everybody's always on the trade block. There's a price for any player on my team. Unlike, someone like Brennan, who you could offer him your entire team and he would still keep Dalvin Cook because he has too much sentimental value. That is not the case for me. I think that's probably not the case for a lot of teams in this league. And like I said earlier, I think it'll be a very interesting week going into the keeper deadline and then a following 2 weeks to see if there are some moves with kept players. But, at least for me, last week with preseason football starting is where it really started to set in like, okay, we're getting close. We're only a few weeks away from the draft. And after the draft, we're like literally 2 days away from the season starting that Thursday. So it's getting very exciting. I'm definitely getting that itch for fantasy football.
I'm so excited for the start of the season. It's going to be a great time. And of course, we have our Pong Stars fantasy weekend. Any fantasy suites at the fantasy weekend, John, do you think?
Ooh, there's a lot of sexual tension between Brennan and Noel. I feel like that's been building up over the last 5 or 6 months. I think it's in large part just because they haven't been able to get their hands on each other, being separated for so long due to COVID and just, living in different cities. So I would not be surprised to see those two hop into the fantasy suite one of the nights and get a little freaky.
One of them will forego their individual room. Let's just say
absolutely.
that. But also for the Pong Stars weekend, we did have our golf trios announced for our 9-man scramble here. Team 1 is Sam, Lucas, and Thomas. Team 2, John, Drew, and Zach. And then team 3, of course, we have Josh, Noel, and Tony, which of course is very, very enjoyable for everybody involved, right?
I do have an inside scoop I would like to break right now regarding the golf extravaganza, if you'll have me.
Of course.
So I have a well-placed source in this league that has told me that last year there was a bit of cheating on one of the teams.
No.
One of the teams that made it to the putt-off.
No.
Yes. Drew Mahold's team of Drew, Brennan, and Tony cheated to get into the playoff.
You're kidding.
I'm not kidding.
Cue the music.
So this is all to say that I will have a watchful eye over the competition this season. And if I spot any cheating, I don't know what action will take place, but action will take place.
All 3 players lose their 3rd round pick next year.
I don't disagree.
I like that.
Yep. So
no cheating.
You heard it here first. My first endeavor into the NFL Insider game. And, I was very saddened by that news when I heard it, but I think the league deserves to know what happened. So we'll see if Drew Mahold and Brennan and Tony have any words to say. Maybe an apology is in order for this ludicrous act by their team. Thankfully, they did not win in the putt off. Say a bit of karma came around, and Sam, Thomas, and Lucas came out on top. But man, I really couldn't believe my ears when I heard that.
That is truly league shocking news, and I'm appalled, frankly, at the brazen level of disrespect to the game that those 3 have brought. Luckily, I guess Sam, Lucas, and Thomas won. Those 3 will be actually defending their title. They're the only team that did not get switched up during the repairings this year. Obviously, we'll have Josh instead of Brennan, so a little bit of a shakeup had to happen there to make teams fair. So Drew
Mahold is now my teammate, a cheater.
Yeah,
a teammate of mine now.
We will be definitely keeping an eye on it. We'll get Drew and Tony are no longer teammates, so maybe their scheming won't be there. And Brennan, frankly, must have been so ashamed he's just not even showing up.
I think that is the reason why he's just not coming in general. He couldn't face the music.
Really just a disappointing all around moment for the league to hear such brazen news.
Yep, you heard it here first. Feel free to dispute me.
But you can't, because it's the truth.
It's the truth. My source is well placed.
Very sad.
Yep.
Man. Well, do you want to go over the fun fact of the week?
Sure.
All right, so this week's fun fact of the week actually is going to be brought to you by the same process that I had the fun fact of the week for Drew Mahold last week, where we did have the analysis of a what if scenario. What if Drew Mahold had not traded away Alvin Kamara? And we ended up finding out that he would have been the league winner, which you hate to see that. So let's take a gander here on a different what if scenario, which I think might be more of a staple of the fun fact of the week this year. A what if scenario this time on what if John Stevens had not traded away Aaron Rodgers for Russell Wilson.
Sponsored by Disney Plus show What If,
which by the way is fantastic. If you guys haven't watched the first episode yet, the animation style superb, and obviously you all know I'm an MCU stan, so anything MCU related I'm going to watch anyways. But I would recommend that What If show. So last year John traded away Aaron Rodgers after trading for him. Got him after week 5, where then in week 6, Aaron Rodgers for John put up 3.8 points in his lowest scoring match of the season. Week 7, still on the roster for 27.32 points. But after that, that is when John traded away his good friend Aaron for Russell Wilson.
My other good friend.
His other great friend, Badger native, Russell Wilson. After that, prior to that, John had lost 2 games before that week 8 split. And after that, in his normal season, lost 1 additional game in week 10 against Drew. He lost by 0.22 points. It's the only game he lost. As a result of trading away Aaron Rodgers, he actually would have won that game by about 13 points, 15 points here. He would have won that game. He would have ended his season 11-2 instead of 10-3, which would have tied the all-time record for highest regular season wins, tying Lucas's 2017 season. But as we look to what would have happened in playoffs here for John, in week 14, he still would have had his bye. Aaron Rodgers did outscore Russell Wilson. So instead of getting 154 points in this bye week, John would have got 163.1 points due to that Aaron Rodgers win. But unfortunately, in week 15, Aaron Rodgers was only able to score 18.32 points, which is only about 6.28 points more than Russell Wilson. So John still would have lost in week 15 to Zach in this scenario, locking him out despite a great week 16 performance, getting an additional point total there as well. But really running up just the score on Sam at that point.
Yeah, I mean, that doesn't break my heart. It is nice to hear in a weird way, that I would have still lost to Zach because, looking back at last season, I do look at that one move as being the reason for why I was not able to win the championship, but that is not the case. It would have been nice, however, to, wrap up with a 11-2 record, tying the league's best. That would have been a cool, piece of hardware to put on my shelf, a piece of imaginary hardware, but
Yeah,
it would have been a cool little thing for a team that hasn't won a championship to kind of like, anytime we're talking about teams who've won championships, I could just, mention my all-time great season where I didn't win a championship, but it was a good season. So that part does kind of sting, but ultimately, in a weird way, happy to hear that I wouldn't have won anyway, because that was kind of my fear.
Yeah, didn't have a shot just due to the absolute steamroll that the gluten freaks had in postseason last year.
Ugh. Yep.
What a great memory.
Run for the ages.
Yeah, a great memory. Can't complain about that. But that is what we have for our fun fact of the week. So let's get on over to our topic for the day. John, you want to introduce our topic for our discussion?
Yeah. So in this week away from the keeper deadline, I thought it would be interesting to go back a year to look at the players that were kept last season and check up on how they're looking going into this season to just see how our fantasy owners in this league fared when selecting their keepers last season. And we found some very interesting things. So we're going to start by first talking about the 5 players who dropped the most in terms of their ranking going into the 2020 season as compared to their ranking going into this season. So we'll start with the 5th worst being a player on Thomas's team. This will be a recurring theme, just spoiler alert. But T.Y. Hilton going into last season, ranked 60th. So theoretically not keeper level talent anyway. Top 50 players would be keeper level talent in our league, but 60th. And this season he is now ranked 137th. So down 77 spots.
Oh my Lord.
Fortunately for Thomas, T.Y. Hilton is no longer on his team. So, take that as you will. But regardless, he did end up keeping a player that has stock has fallen quite a bit, going
dramatically,
yeah.
One might say. Yeah, no, and during the trades, actually, T.Y. Hilton got traded to Thomas for a keeper spot.
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, so that's definitely, a tough pill for our boy Thomas to swallow. Just a clarification here. These spots aren't by position. They're by just total
just
ranking.
Overall ranking.
Yeah.
Yep. So the second one, I think maybe will come as a bit of a surprise, but someone from Noel's team, Michael Thomas, who everybody thought was the clear number 1 overall wide receiver going into last season. He was actually ranked 5th overall amongst all fantasy players going into this season, given his recent injury now. But I think he would be ranked much lower anyway. But including his injury, he is now ranked 113th among all fantasy players. So a drop of 108 spots. Michael Thomas still on Noel's roster. So it will be interesting to see if Noel, still keeps him despite the injury. But regardless, that is definitely a tough blow for a guy that really everyone thought was going to be a perennial, top 5 wide receiver going forward for the next few years.
Yeah, when I originally when we did the 2019 draft, I took DeAndre Hopkins and Michael Thomas at the turn, just given the lack of running back depth. Mm-hmm. I remember that after looking at that, I felt a little bit swindled at the end of the 2019 season, having traded away David Johnson, but David Johnson was a league winner in the 2020 season, scoring 27.4 points in the championship game of the 2020 season, whereas Michael Thomas played two snaps last season.
That trade after last season looked awful for you, but after this most recent season, it looked pretty good.
Yeah.
But yeah,
the turntables.
Yes, definitely. How the turntables. All right, so going into then the 3rd worst keeper from last season, this player coming from Tony's roster, another person who you might hear their name on here one more time. Tony kept Mark Ingram as one of his running backs going into the season, the 49th ranked player, so technically a keeper level talent. But just as I think myself and Zach predicted, his role quickly got taken over by J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards,
Lamar still being there. So he dropped from the 49th spot to the 236th spot going into this season, 187 spots down. Mark Ingram is not on Tony's roster anymore. I don't believe he's on anyone's roster. I believe he's a free agent. I believe that's true. I know that I ended up getting Tony to trade me Mark Ingram. Actually, Tony was going to drop Mark Ingram in the trade. So that is, Tony just gave me Mark Ingram because it was bound to happen. Just through it. But yeah, Mark Ingram right now is a free agent, and also not the number 1 back anymore anywhere. He is in the potentially worst committee for fantasy value I've ever seen on the Houston Texans here. David Johnson, Philip Lindsay, even Rex Burkhead, definitely there to take away some spot. That is a horrible fantasy situation.
Awful fantasy situation. Smart, probably, situation for the actual team, just loading up on a bunch of guys who are just solid.
Yeah, dependable dudes.
Yeah.
But
not great. Not great for Tony. Again, we'll hear his name later. But going back now, we have Thomas keeping Le'Veon Bell last season, the 43rd ranked player going into the season. I can't remember. I think at the time that Thomas kept him, he was still technically on the Jets.
Yes.
And eventually got moved to Kansas City. But 43rd going into last season, now this season ranked 319th. I'm not even sure what team he is on. He might still be on Kansas City. I really don't know.
I believe he's a free agent now.
He's a free agent. He's not even on a team. I'm sure he'll get signed at some point, but ranked 319th, a drop of 276 spots. And he is still on Thomas's team. So, Thomas, maybe roll the dice, keep him. I know you don't have a ton of guys that are worthy of a keeper spot on your team. Maybe, take a chance, and Le'Veon Bell could be the greatest success story going into next season when we do this analysis.
I mean, if we were talking about Le'Veon Bell from 2016, was that when he was good?
Something like that.
It's been a while.
Feels like a very, very long time ago.
Yeah. So he was on the Jets for a season and a half, and prior to that, he sat out. So it must have been like 3 or 4 seasons
2017
ago.
or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's been a long time for Le'Veon Bell and a few teams ago. So
yeah,
not sure he'll ever get back to his old ways, but I guess we'll find out. And then the bottom spot. So the player who dropped the most places going from last season into this season was Todd Gurley, also kept by Tony. His 2 running backs that he kept were Todd Gurley and Mark Ingram.
Oh my God.
Todd Gurley was ranked 33rd going into last season. Todd Gurley is now ranked 327th, a drop of 294 spots. Like Mark Ingram, though, Todd Gurley is not on Tony's roster anymore. Obviously, he's replaced him with more youthful running backs.
Spry running backs.
But, yeah,
Yeah, he's on Josh's team right now.
Yeah,
but Todd Gurley is not on a roster at this point.
Yeah. Tough pill for Tony to swallow. I don't really remember what other players he could have kept in place of those 2 guys, but I think both running backs that going into the season, a lot of people were pretty low on, and they were proved correct by those players really not producing much in the season, and now going into the season, not on a roster.
Props to Tony, though. I will say that mere 30 minutes, I think, after the draft ended last year, Tony did trade away Todd Gurley to Josh for DeAndre Swift, who is a potential keeper level talent this year.
That is true.
He traded 2 4th rounders to get a 3rd and a 5th as well for this upcoming draft. I mean, when it comes down to it, Todd Gurley, terrible stock option right now, obviously, but may have been able to sell him early enough to get some good value.
Definitely. Yeah, good move, Tony. All right. So that wraps up the worst 5 keepers from last season. Now we're going to get into the 5 keepers that have improved their rank going into this season the most. So the first player is the only player of these top 5 who is not on the same team that he was in the previous season. And that player is Austin Eckler. Sorry, Drew.
Yes.
Austin Eckler going into last season was ranked 23rd. He is now ranked 14th.
Woo!
An improvement of 9 spots. And I think a lot of people would probably argue that 14th is actually maybe a low rank for him.
Yeah.
A lot of people are very, very high on Austin Eckler going into the season. With Justin Herbert on the Chargers, it does sound like there is going to be a little bit of a committee approach like there is on pretty much every team. But obviously, Austin Eckler has proven time and time again that he's a very effective pass catcher, and in a 0.5 PPR league, that is very important. So it'll be interesting to see what he's able to do for you this year, Zach. But a nice little bump up from his rank last season.
Yeah, I'm very excited about Austin Eckler coming into this season. I was big on Eckler basically since Drew put him on the trade block in like week 2, I was trying to get him. And Drew was interested in Kenyon Drake for some reason at the time, but then Eckler got hurt. But then so did Drake. So we eventually were able to get to that agreement. I'm feeling great about that trade.
I think you should. I think you should. All right. Getting into the fourth player then, it was Aaron Jones on my own team from the Packers. Going into last season, ranked 22nd. Going into this season, ranked 7th. I do find it a bit interesting because he is actually going from the 2019 to the 2020 season, did go down in production, but still was like a top 5 running back last season in our league format. And so, yeah, an improvement of 15 spots. He's still on my roster as of now, will be kept for sure, unless I trade him away in the next week. But yeah,
I'm actually shocked that he was ranked 22nd in coming. There was a lot of talk, I know, last year coming into the season that Aaron Jones was touchdown dependent.
Yes,
because he had such a ridiculous number of touchdowns. But I think he really evened that out this past season with just like actually getting the volume to be that number 1 guy.
Yeah, I agree. I was very surprised to see that he was ranked 22nd. I would have guessed he was for sure in the first 2 rounds, probably closer to like 15 or something. But nevertheless, number 7 now and on my team. So not mad about that.
No, I wouldn't be either.
All right. The next guy on this list, number 3 in terms of improvement, is AJ Brown. And this is a guy that really not surprising to me. Was ranked pretty well last year at 36. Definitely a top wide receiver going into last season, but has improved on that mark, jumping all the way up to the 20th spot. In that top 2 rounds for a standard league. So definitely a big improvement there, up 16 spots. And, definitely a guy that's going to be kept by Josh. I think he'll be, he's very happy to have him on his roster and glad to have seen his stock rise over the year after he drafted him. So
I am shocked by that, truthfully. Not that AJ Brown isn't, I guess ranked 20th, so it's not necessarily an elite position necessarily. So first 2-round pick, but just I don't know. I'm a bit confused with Julio being there now. If there's going to be the volume to be able to justify that ranking, but I'm happy to be proved wrong. It'll be interesting to see the season.
Yeah, amongst wide receivers, he is ranked as the 7th best wide receiver fantasy-wise going into this season. I definitely hear you with the Julio argument. I do personally feel like AJ Brown will be the more productive of those 2 guys, just with his age and his extreme athletic ability. Not to say that Julio isn't, but obviously AJ Brown already has that established connection with Ryan Tannehill. I think Julio, just given his history, will draw a lot of the top cover guys, just out of respect, frankly.
You have to.
But yeah, it'll be interesting. I definitely wouldn't be shocked if Julio, became the more productive of the 2. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility, but I would definitely favor AJ Brown. I would definitely personally rather have AJ Brown on my team going into this season.
Well, as a keeper, he's a bit younger, so we'll see how it goes.
All right. Getting into the second spot then is actually a guy off of Thomas's team. So Thomas did have a couple of guys who were very poor, but did have Keenan Allen, another guy that I would really like to have on my team.
Same.
I really just want anybody from the Chargers. I'm really high on the Chargers going into this season. Keenan Allen was ranked 51st going into last season, so just out of that top 50 players. But a good decision by Thomas to keep him, as he is now ranked 23rd going into this season, a improvement of 28 places. And good for Thomas. Keenan Allen, the 9th ranked overall wide receiver, in the past has seen a lot of targets and a lot of receptions, so a very good PPR player. It'll be interesting to see if he is able to keep it up. I really don't see any reason why he wouldn't, but we'll see. Definitely, obviously, a keeper for Thomas at this moment in time.
Yeah, given Thomas's roster, absolutely. He has, every receiver has issues with sometimes just low volume in a game, but I think Keenan Allen especially has done a pretty good job, especially over the 2020 season, of maintaining a pretty stable floor of usually getting in double digits. So I definitely love the keep here.
Yeah, definitely. Very consistent player. All right. And that brings us to our number one spot from Tony's team. Just like Thomas had 2 in the bottom 5, but has the number 1 most improved keeper going from last season in Stefan Diggs.
Oh, yeah.
He was actually amongst non-quarterbacks, he was the lowest ranked player kept in our league last season at 63rd, ranked even below T.Y. Hilton. A lot of people were very low on him, didn't know how it would work in Buffalo, but obviously it worked out very well. He is now the 11th ranked overall fantasy player going into this season, an improvement of 52 places.
Wow.
And I believe that he is the 3rd ranked wide receiver. So, the year of Tony continues. This show just can't get enough of Tony and letting him know what a great job he did last season. But great job, Tony. You kept the player who improved the most. So
I'm not that surprised. I mean, the Josh Allen, Stefan Diggs duo was electric. I mean, imagine if Tony had kept Allen. I mean, he probably actually he definitely would have made a playoff spot, I think, in my opinion. And who knows what could have happened during playoffs. But I think that the 63rd rank going into last season, that was a bit disrespectful to Stefan.
Yeah, I know. In hindsight, that's just absolutely mind-boggling. Like I can't even wrap my head around that.
Like there's other receivers on there that he was better than. Chemistry with a new quarterback, that's always an issue that brings ranks down a little bit, but that still seems questionable.
Definitely suspect.
Yeah. But no, congrats, Tony. I'm expecting a lot out of your team this year.
The expectations are very high for Tony.
Yeah, so it is going to be a situation where this is the rebuild, right? Yep. Like this is the opportunity that he needs to make an elite team. And I think there's a lot of teams in regression right now. Yep. And this is the year of the Tony. And if he can't do it now, he's never going to be able to do it. I think. Yeah,
it's gonna be tough to come back from. So. All right, so that wrapped up the 10 players I wanted to talk about. Really quickly, I do want to talk about just the overall roster improvements or not for every team actually in our league. So collectively looking at the 5 players who were kept going into last season, I looked at what their collective ranking was last season and where it is going into this season to see overall how that team owner did in terms of selecting their keepers. So overall, Thomas's players collectively dropped 521 spots, making him the worst team owner in terms of selecting his keepers going into last season in terms of how they fared today. Tony's keepers dropped 460 places.
Oh boy.
Brennan's, then there's a big jump here. Those are by far the lowest too. Brennan's keepers dropped a collective 125 spots. Noel dropped 101 or 107 spots, a big chunk of that due to Michael Thomas.
Yep.
Lucas's keepers from last season dropped 103 spots. Kind of surprising to me given how Lucas's team did. I think obviously he traded away a lot of his keepers, but
he did. Yeah.
I don't know. I expected his to be much lower than that. So good job, Lucas. Only down 103. Right in the middle of the pack. Sam's keepers collectively down 93 spots. Josh's keepers down 82 spots. And Zach next at 61 spots down.
That seems about
Then
right.
There's another pretty significant jump. Drew's keepers collectively only went down 14 spots.
Wow.
Yep.
That's very impressive.
And then my team collectively went down 2 spots. But we didn't have a single team owner that selected 5 keepers that collectively improved their rank going into this season, which I found very interesting.
That is very interesting. I guess it kind of just shows, I don't know, each year with age, you're going to expect your top guys, like I don't know who's an older running back. Your Todd Gurley's
Yeah, exactly.
to really fall off the ledge at a certain point.
Yeah, I think age is definitely a massive part of that.
Yeah.
Interesting to note. So one last note I want to make on this topic. So Tony's team dropped 460 spots. That is not even including Drew Brees because he's not even playing anymore.
Wow.
So that was just amongst 4 players. 4 players collectively dropped 460 spots.
And he had the top guy,
and he had
too.
The top
guy. Good job getting rid of those guys, Tony. Yep. Smart. No, that's super interesting analysis. I'm just excited for the season to start here. Obviously, the keeper aspect of this league really sets it apart, I think, from other leagues that we may be involved in. It really increases the amount of ownership you have on your team. Yeah. And especially the pick trading, I think, comes in really, really key to keeping that enjoyment level up even during the off season. And I'm just really excited to see how this draft goes. Looking at the draft board, it is a nightmare. I hate it so much. It is difficult to look at, but I am just, really excited to see what those final rosters end up like coming into the season.
I said it last year, and I think I still stand by it. I think we nailed it with setting the limit at 5 keepers.
Absolutely.
It is I feel like every team has a hard decision. Not every team, but most teams have a hard decision on who that 5th guy is. There's 4 very clear. In that 5th spot, there's some options. And I think that makes it really fun, and definitely makes it challenging. And based on what we talked about today, can have a very big impact on your season in terms of who that guy that you keep in that 5th spot. So I really love the 5 keepers. I'm really glad that that's the number that we settled on.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think that it, like for my team, for instance, having to choose between right now Julio, Cooper Kupp, and Myles Gaskin has been something I've been wrestling with the entire offseason. Obviously, reports from training camp and preseason games are helping to make that decision a little bit easier, but it is by no means easy. I mean, Kareem Hunt is up there, who would be a keeper on some people's teams. So there's you got the same issue with players like Miles Sanders, Darren Waller, all those guys who are like keeper level talent, but with only 5 have definitely been a struggle getting there.
Definitely.
But that's all we have for this week, folks. Tune in next time. We're going to be discussing, of course, next week, hopefully, the keepers and where we're actually at ranking teams going into the preseason. Keep an eye out. I'll be sending out the preseason rankings or the post keeper deadline rankings form to see where people think their teams are. We'll have preseason ranking right after the draft. Prior to week 1 as well, after we get those draft results. So
and if we know one thing, we know that those rankings amongst team owners are always very serious and very legitimate. There are definitely never any selections of rankings that are not truthful or accurate.
Yeah, we have a really honest league here that take it really seriously, as John mentioned, and I'm really happy about that. Those rankings have a huge impact on the mentality that these players have going week to week, facing off against new opponents. So definitely excited to get those rankings back up and going. One more thing, of course, I want to make a plug here at the end for the Pong Stars Pick'em. And the award at the end there, of course, is the Rocco Memorial Trophy, currently held by Noel. That's his 2nd year in a row winning it, last year off a tiebreaker. It's really exciting stuff. And I hope that everybody decides to participate this year. Not sure what the format will be necessarily for the Pick'em segment on this podcast yet. Any ideas that folks have, I'm happy to listen, but hopefully everybody participates in the picks this year. But with that, we're signing off, and we'll see you next time.